Welcome back to Builders of the Broken Bazaar. I'm your host, Dr. Tabish Zaman. Now, where else to start today than technology, which in today's times is seen as a great equalizer, a force that can leap over borders and bypass the broken system. But Palestine today shows us the limit of that belief. Even the most advanced platform, they cannot erase checkpoints. They cannot undo blockades. And more importantly, as we are seeing right now, they cannot stop bombs. But what they can do is reveal how fragile our faith in progress really is and how much more urgently we need to anchor technology in humanity, dignity, and justice. And that's the lens I want to carry into today's conversation because my guest, Mona Fowzy, has spent more than 2 decades building software, not just as an abstract exercise, but as a resource to improve lives. From science labs to streaming platforms, Mona's work shows us that technology has a moral weight and that engineers too make choices that shape our collective future. She began her career even before graduating college, writing software for scientists at SciX. She's since built AAA games at EA, streaming platforms for AOL, Yahoo, and CBS, and tools for many more artists, musicians, and designers. In 2023, her work was formally recognized with nomination for Global Leader Award, which celebrated not only her technical achievement, but also her role in advancing inclusion in a very male-dominated industry. Mona, welcome to the Builders of the Broken Bazaar.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Mona, before we turn to your journey, I want to start with Palestine because what it does to me is it reveals a gap in the progress we think as humans we are making. Now, more than 7 decades now, Palestinians have lived under displacement, blockades, and occupation. I know children who've grown up knowing checkpoints before classrooms, and of course, parents and generations have rebuilt homes for the third or the fourth time. And more importantly, now, the death and the destruction of a community at an unprecedented scale. So, if technology and entrepreneurship mean anything at all to us, I feel they must speak to these realities, not just about scale ups or economic growth in some other parts of the world. Now, you have spent your career proving that technology can and should improve lives. So, when you look at Palestine through that lens, what does it tell us about the moral limit of our industry and about the responsibility of those who build within it?
Yeah, I think it tells us quite a bit about the morality. And, I think for me, I don't see it as moral limits anymore. I think before really diving into and understanding the Israel-Palestine conflict, I've always been in big tech. I've always been, growing up on the West, I was always been fascinated by advancements in technology, and which is why, I chose my career in the space. And I think what I have learned, and I didn't understand like anyone, we all had been told the narrative, two sides fighting, religious debating over land, like, equal territorial claims, all of that. So we had been, spoon fed the narrative of World War II as well. And so, yeah, as well, the narrative of capitalism, right? Greed, greedy corporations are just going to fight it out. But I think what I've learned over the last 2 years in terms of my research and in terms of even technology and the role that it has played, it is to me, it's far more obvious that it's not about limits and it's about collusion and conspiracy and using technology to further those, colonial conspiratorial aims. And I think that drastically changes my perspective as to my role within the West, having been a builder my whole life and continuing to be a builder. But I think so I feel far more responsible now that I'm aware that it's not an accident. We didn't accidentally build drones that target Palestinians. We didn't accidentally build, software services and, AI machines that are identifying who to target, where's daddy, lavender. I mean, we have a bunch of pieces that have exposed really the the conspiracy that is using technology for mass murder. And the fact that it is all of the industries and all of the organizations that I've looked up to my whole career, Microsoft, Google, questionable if I ever looked up to Google, I never did, but they're part of the impressive corporations that have given us so-called, tools to help us further our professional and personal aims and just to help us and improve our quality of life. They've been secretly colluding, overseas and in foreign policy to kill people. So that just cancels out to me any benefit. I mean, it's disgusting, it's horrific, and to me, it's not accidental, right? So I think that's been my position, kind of the last 2 years, and having my eyes open, just like everyone else. And I believe now that we are, as engineers, particularly as engineers, because everything is built around, like with technology companies like Google, like Microsoft, you don't have a company if you don't have engineers willing to write the code, right? So it doesn't, so I understand everybody is, I believe at this point as well, everyone is liable, right? If you're aware of what they're doing and you still participate, you're liable. But more so, the talent that powers the organization, they're the most liable. So without engineers, there would be no Google, there would be no Microsoft. So it's imperative that the engineers that become aware, I don't know how much of my code has been used for evil. Like I've been a participant in this. So now I'm, actively ensuring that the things that I do are going to counteract and are going to, further human rights and justice, and not kind of blindly continue down the path of helping the company. So that's just my perspective now.
Yeah. No, I've followed your work and the way you look through the lens. Again, different companies, different ways of working, and different philosophies as well. But talking about the ecosystem of technology in general, as to how far it has come and where we are with it right now. And again, you being a representative of that industry, although you have clearly shown through your work how different you are to the rest of the pack. And again, I feel it's not just Palestine. There are other aspects as well which touches us in the form of technology. How do we dissociate ourselves from that stream which is coming at us, especially now when we talk about artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really hard. It's hard for the average person who isn't, involved and doesn't know what's going on under the hood. It's really difficult for like the average layman to understand how to filter and, all of these. There's just so much narrative as well about the technology that comes with. I mean, we see it with, with crypto, we see it with AI. It's imperative that they are able to sell it, right? There's billions of dollars of investment. So that we're told it's good for us. We're told we're going to be left behind if we don't adopt. We're told all these things. How do you know what's real? How do you know what's not, right? It's really difficult. I think, okay, so for me, just from a person, an engineer. I'm like, I'm very well read. I'm very much involved. I code every day. I consider myself not the latest adopter. So my philosophy is I'm not first, I'm last. Or, so I'm not, I don't think you should be first, right? I think unless it benefits your industry, it benefits your values, it benefits something that you're doing for the greater good or whatever your goals are, by all means. But don't be first just to be first. I mean, that's one of the narratives that they, part of, capitalism, part of, just the whole kind of commercial landscape. But I think don't be first. That's kind of my thing. Don't be a guinea pig. Don't be the test. Wait, play it out. A lot of these things come, they go, they die. And a lot of these things take training. A lot of these things, so I'm personally never first. You'll see my like, phone is, I don't even know how many versions behind. I'll wait till it breaks. I mean, which I think is a practical thing as well. Why do you need the technology? And then from adopting kind of new workflows or new tools like ChatGPT, for me, it's actually, I have simple kind of filters or simple lens by which I like measure these things, but it needs to, it needs to save me time or make me money, or serve something greater, right? If I'm just getting lost in the entertainment of something, there's no end value. I understand that it's not really something that I must adopt. So I think everyone should take a personal lens as to how this is actually making your life better, and don't just follow the fads, because I think we have to remember that there's a whole, there's a lot of money in it, and there's a lot of people depending on its success, whatever it is. Because if you think about how even chat gpt and AI, a lot of money went into building, a lot of money is spent on the daily just to maintain it. It's kind of like this. I believe it's like it's kind of a little bit of a hoax, in a lot of ways, because if you pull behind the curtains and you understand kind of how many computers and how what the monthly cost of just keeping that up, the amount of humans involved is still, it's not just some magical robot that. So, but I just think just being aware that there is ulterior motives than just the pure, altruistic benefits of technology. And then now we're really seeing that no one in the West is building things for the betterment of advancement of humanity. Maybe in the past, maybe a long time ago, we had that, but we're well beyond those days. So I think it's important just to take a personal perspective as to like really how is this benefiting you, and just to be really honest with yourself. Like if you're going to waste your time on something, admit that that's what's happening. Like the whole infinite scroll and all of that, but just be honest about it. You're not going to lose your job if you're critical about kind of the skills that you adopt and things like that. All of this is just a way to push and advance their agenda. So,
I mean, this awareness has to come in, and we can say that you and me, that way, we benefit from it because, again, maybe we are part of that ecosystem where we belong and we have seen what is happening around, because we are being shown the shiny side of what is coming to us in the form of technology. But again, a lot of those individuals who are still debating or who are being wowed by so many types of technology in all walks of life. But then how do we actually tell them that the previous versions of technology, which was already there, has really not solved what it was meant to solve, or the promises which it was meant to fulfill? And now you're being told, get on with the new technology, artificial intelligence. So again, what's the message as far as you're concerned coming from an industry to them?
So can you explain what you mean by?
So your message to those adopters, those early adopters, when it comes to new technology, especially artificial intelligence?
I mean, I think it's interesting. I think like there's a lot of probably memes that could better describe my messaging or my advice. But it really is, to me, just looks like sheep to the slaughter in a lot of ways. Like, I think if you look at social media, you look at how many people it hasn't helped. And I think interestingly enough, like humans who are resourceful will always be resourceful. Humans who, are going to go and use things for their benefit. We're always like, no matter what's thrown our way. I think that from the dawn of time, right? I think there's always going to be people that will use things for their advantage, like use social media in a positive way, and there will always be people that get that fall into the trap of evil technologies. And so I think that's to me the early adopter, right? If you're just if you see a line and you line up, you're an early adopter, just sheep to the slaughter. So I think that's the way I look at it. Like, know why you're there. Why are you in this line? Yeah. It's not just to spend money. I think like the whole the Kardashians, like kind of wanting to be like them. What is the term? There's like the Joneses, or there's a term for like.
Is it the influencers you're talking about?
Yeah, but there's for like
yes.
And that's not a value. That's something that they told you that you should covet, iPhone X because your neighbor has it. There's no weight behind that. Why, right? Ask yourself why, ask yourself 5 whys. But I think to me, that's what I would say is like, how does it benefit in your life? And once you start to take that stance, you start to have the power. You start to be a player in your own life. Like I don't push people to boycott blindly, right? I don't push people to say, Microsoft does this, so don't ever use them, because that to me is just almost as ineffective, because you're shooting yourself in the foot, right? So I always say, like, use these things to further your goals. And if my goal and your goal is to help liberate, the oppressed and help fight kind of this evil, then by all means I'm going to use, like, I have services. Help Fund Gaza is hosted in Amazon. Of course I'm going to host. It's much more effective. It's much cheaper. Like, I'm not going to shoot myself in the foot to then help Palestinians in Gaza who are trying to survive, right? So I think it's important to, like, understand your own values, what your own strategy is, and then apply that externally and then take what you want. They're taking from you, right? So use whatever you need that's available to fulfill your end means.
Yeah,
just the way they are. We're ethical, so we will apply our ethics, in the process.
Absolutely. I think that's a very practical message you've given. But what you just mentioned, we've been shouting through our academic work in terms of a lot of those institutional theories where organizations adopt something new in the environment just because their competitors have gone on to adopt a similar technology. Whether it works for them or not, that's a completely different question. But I think your message will be more profound, Mona, if I give my audience a bit of a background in terms of your own trajectory. So you began writing the software even before you graduated, right? Building tools, for the company, I believe Sykes, whose mission was to protect health and safety, if I'm correct. So there is about, you're looking at coding, which shapes the outcome of people's lives. So when you look back at the beginning, what did it mean to start your career with technology so directly tied in with human wellness?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was how I decided to become. I mean, that was the moment that where I decided to become a professional software engineer, is when I went to college just like everyone else. I happened to be strong in I went to college for math, not necessarily computer science, and I happened to be strong in math because my dad was a mathematician, and I had three siblings, two twin brothers and an older sister, and my dad just loved logic puzzles, and he loved, like, math problems, and he wanted his kids to learn, but my siblings just didn't care. Two of my brothers were my dad was an athlete as well, so they just wanted to play soccer, and so I was the middle child. I was quiet, and so he got a lot of my time, as I went, from the ages of 4 to like 11. I remember doing a lot of math sessions with him, so I ended up being skilled at math, which, by the way, is not something that you're born with. It's literally something, and I'm kind of proof of that. Like, I just had extra time, with my dad by virtue of just by luck, effectively, and I became good at math, like, really good. I was winning kind of in my state. I grew up in Canada, so I ended up getting into, like, one of the best math schools in Canada. And I didn't know I was going to be an engineer. My dad had come home. He was an electrical engineer, so he'd come home when I was in high school with, like, Visual Basic and, like, kind of some of these. And again, me and my brothers, we'd be curious, so we'd install it. I remember making a video game for my brothers around their baseball cards. It was so basic. It was like I indexed every single one of their baseball cards. It was a way for them to, like, manage and visualize and exchange their cards with their friends. But I remember it was fun. I didn't think it was coding back then. But when I went to college, I went to the school where it was a 5-year program, and from first year, it was a work program. So from first year you did 1A in school, and then you had to find a work placement. So 1B work, 2A school. It was really unique. 2B work. So by the time I graduated, I had 6 different work terms where I spent working, and a lot of the math kids, they would go into kind of teaching. So they would get placements that were in tutoring or undergrad kind of, but I ended up, because I already had some coding experience, I ended up getting, like, my first job was a coding job. And so by second year I was advanced. So I got an internship at this company, Sykes. And it was just again, luck. This company was, like, the biggest, health sciences company in North America. And they built these devices for cancer discovery called their LCMS devices, $1 million machines, massive machines. And so chemists would use them, and they would put, like, compounds in one end, and then they would go through this vacuum, and based off of the behaviors through this, like, combustible vacuum, they would be basically exploded at high heat. They would be able to identify. And so the software was, like, super critical, like the software so then they would do all this. They would sit at their computer and run through this software that would plot all of their findings. And I was on this team. So this was like the first real professional software job I got was in 2B. And I remember like I was just an intern and I would be working with a chemist and I would be helping kind of go, add like working through the next feature. They wanted more higher, there's a lot of math algorithms or math formulas, but more higher grain results depending on compounds and things like that. And I just remember thinking about how powerful. And I remember fixing a bug. I remember fixing something like minor that was blocking one of the chemists from exporting or something. And I just remember they were so like grateful. Like they had been waiting for this and had been kind of blocking, and in order to get around it, they were like spending 2 hours doing something else. And the solve, cut that 2 hours out every week. And they were just so grateful. And I remember just that was the moment I was like, oh, wow, like this is so cool that like this person has now a better quality of life professionally because of the software. Like the better the software, the better that they like, the more they like their job. And that was like the first moment that I had that realization. But this has driven my entire career because I consider myself like a tools developer, a tools engineer. I build tools to empower humans, and it's not the other way around. Like I'm not building, and I don't believe that there's such a thing as building technology to replace humans. I believe you can build technology to replace tasks, but not humans. And if technology is being used to replace tasks, those humans shouldn't be doing those tasks. Like that's just that those humans are now free. So I really believe that technology really, as at its core and at its mission, it is to empower the human, and it will never. And if you try to fight that, you're going down a path that's not a winning path. So anyone who thinks that AI is going to replace humans, I think that I wouldn't take that bet. Not today, not tomorrow.
I think that's a beautiful story, Mona, and the way you took us through your family in terms of with your interaction with your dad, how it all came about. But one thing really stood out there when you're talking about working as an intern when you were there, and with the other disciplines, isn't it? I mean, that organization gave you an opportunity to look yourself from a technology point of view as a software specialist, But then you were side by side with someone from a completely different discipline. So I believe that really shaped your understanding of how technology should intertwine with the lives. And again, I think science gave you that platform. But then you moved on in terms of, because I can see clearly from your profile, games, media, streaming, design. Now, if you look at it, for some people, that might be a series of very unrelated jobs. But I believe there's a deeper thread connecting it all. Am I correct? So what's the story running through those chapters? So games, media, streaming, design, and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think after I graduated, so I think at the core of how I've approached my career and how I always advise people, I do things that I love, right? And I think people should chase that. I've always, when people ask me, young engineers have asked me so many times, should I take this job that's going to pay me more? Or should I take this other job? Should I take the higher paying job or should I take this? Like I've got those asked so many times. And I always say, take the job where you're going to learn the most, you're going to enjoy it the most. That's my answer every single time. And that to me will unlock immeasurable success in your life. So if you choose to always spend your time on things where you lose your time because you're so absorbed, it doesn't matter what it is. So I always say follow, whether it's music, whether it's coding, I truly believe, and I have seen with my own eyes, I have a lived experience, but I've seen it around me that if you spend from, the moment, and I wish everyone was advised this. And I think that unfortunately in the West, high school students and university students are not advised this way and I believe that is why it's so hard, because if it's success is compounded off of the hours that you spend. And if you spend it on the things that you really enjoy, you are magnifying your learnings, and so if you magnify your learnings early, by the time you're 30, it's compounded. But if you chase the money and you don't like what you do, you're just reducing your output. You're right. You're reducing your potential to learn. So I think it really, especially when it's a skilled craft, like, when it's something that has an open-ended opportunity, you should chase your personal growth. And I always say with this analogy too, like imagine, this is just me and I think it actually fits today, but I would say this years ago. I always would picture the world without money, right? Like if tomorrow there was no money, what would you trade? What would be your trade?
That is such a profound message that, again, it might be bustling to today's generation if we talk about that. But coming from you, that makes sense, especially because you were nurtured into this understanding, how you started, how you told us, in terms of your own story. But then you've gone on to do great things, Mona, isn't it, in terms of launching platform for AOL, Yahoo, CBS. Again, we don't need to talk about how big they are, but millions of listeners. So again, to an outsider, it looks like a huge, huge scale. But for you, when you look back, what stays with you the most? Thinking about these names, again, I know what I can get from you, but is it the technical challenge? Is it about the reach, or is it about the way those organizations were part of everyday lives?
I mean, I think I always wanted to, I think it was more about my team and the people that I would work with. So whenever I looked to join another organization, obviously obviously the industry was really important to me, in the sense that it needed to and this is pre-Palestine. So, I wasn't, I didn't know about genocide that was happening, but I always wanted it to be good for the world in some way, beneficial. So entertainment, not harm. I would never have gone into finance. Like, just to give you an example, I would never have worked for a bank. I never would have worked for Google. Like, that was just something, even from the beginning, because I always suspected their inception. I always suspected that they weren't a good company. I also interviewed with them, I remember in 2008, and it felt very, it reaffirmed a lot of my suspicions. So I never would have worked for Google, but I wanted to work for industries. And I love music and I love fashion and I love video games was a bit of a stretch, but it was my way. It was early in my career, and all of my friends who graduated went to EA in Vancouver. So I had I graduated a little behind my friends because I ended up staying an extra. I worked at SciX. I took a year and a half off to continue working there, and I graduated a little later. But all my friends had went to EA. But when I did join EA, I wasn't working on an individual game team. I was working on, again, tools for the artists and the designers to build amazing games. So I was working really directly with, the experts, again, as a service provider, which is how I view myself. So yeah, I think I always looked for, and so at SciX I learned, I worked with some of the best minds and beautiful people, and it kind of that was the bar. And so when I went to EA, I worked with some of the best, most beautiful people. And the thing I learned about working on, and I was, oftentimes the only girl, one of the only girls. I always felt, this is where, I always felt like truly great people who are focused on their craft, it's hard for them to be bigoted. I always felt that all of my teams, when they were truly, great thinkers, people that were trying to really solve difficult problems for the betterment of, the world, or the betterment of somebody's life, or I felt that there was no bigotry. We all just, it was so fluid. There was so much flow. It was, if we fought, it was about what was the better solution. It wasn't about, so I never felt it, and so that's kind of, to me, goes hand in hand. Like, you work with, great people who are trying to really solve great problems, who are great artists, who are just invested in their own craft. It's hard for them to be bigoted because they're enlightened in a lot of ways by part of pursuing that level of skill and talent. So yeah.
So again, in terms of working with these individuals who are, again, one of the best in the industry and they're high achievers as well, how were you able to differentiate between the actual purpose of what they were doing and what your goals and what your objectives were, in terms of who you were as a professional, as an engineer, someone who represented the industry as such? So how were you able to distinguish yourself from them despite working with them and around them?
That's a really great question, because I think that actually is a big kind of concern or consideration for a lot of professionals, particularly in professional software. particularly with product and design, when the engineering and product and design team come together to build great products, there is a lot of overlap. And I've been on teams where there has been conflict and there has been territorial, disputes, let's say. And I think that's important. It shows passion, to feel like you're. But I do think it's important to like be flexible. And I do think it's one of my strengths, particularly because growing up, we moved around a lot. And I think that gave it me a different kind of, I would have loved to have settled down somewhere. And there's all these positives about growing up in the same place. But I do think it made me kind of fit in to the gaps better. And so, yeah, I think the thing that I feel I try to do is I don't, if somebody does something better, that's great. I think that's how, I think humans, there is going to be overlap. Even if somebody's non-technical, we have overlap because I'm not just a coder. And they're not just a designer. There's so I think it's important to just recognize that overlap is actually good. And it doesn't, and somebody being good at something doesn't take away from your success. In fact, and I think it's an important lens because I think that they want us to look at each other and to compete with each other and think that there's a limited amount of success out there. And if somebody gets X, that means you didn't get that X. And I think it's a mindset that we need to flip. And it's as simple because it's as simple as thinking there isn't a limited amount of success out there, right? Imagine thinking there's X for everyone. So I think that has helped me, that kind of approach of like, 5 of us can all be good at the same thing. That actually makes this 5x more, more successful, right? The potential is even greater. So, yeah.
And you bring that notion of how being collaborative is more important in today's times than being competitive, which is what the traditional playbook is in terms of both career and entrepreneurship or startups we're talking about. Now, let me take you to 2023, if that's all right. You were nominated for a Leaders Award. I know so many questions would have come to you for this, but the recognition wasn't just about your technical skills, if I'm correct. It was also about your leadership, your inclusion, your ability to make an impact. And again, that ties in with what you just mentioned. So for someone who spends such a long time in technology and with that philosophy to say that technology should improve lives, so when this all came about, or when such recognition comes about, what do you think, or how do you take it? Is it about validation, or is it about a milestone which you've ticked off your list? Or how do you move on to thinking it's just another step in your journey which you're writing with your career?
When you mentioned the award, I totally forgot about it. So it's not even a blip. It's not something I chase or look at, or it doesn't even register on my, particularly because I'm not marketing myself in any way. I think the other thing is once you put CEO, once I founded Jane Tech and I put CEO versus like CTO as, an employee at a large company, you start to get some interesting emails that kind of show you how these things work. And so, for example, like all of these top 100 lists, I've learned that people buy into them and people buy into these leadership awards and stuff. So I don't care, right? I really don't. And I think I want my products to win awards, right? I love the things that we build, particularly things that I build on behalf of the clients. When products win awards, I think that's meaningful, because, that it shows that you are staying abreast and your technical excellence is where you want it to be. So I want products to win awards, but as a human, that's never been something that's on my radar. I don't put that much value into it, to be honest.
But let's talk a bit more about this. And the reason I'm bringing this up over and over again is because it has seeped into every aspect of our society, no matter which industry you go to. And again, to the highest level, what we are seeing, the charade which is happening at the topmost political level in terms of a particular kind of award. But we as humans, we look at awards through our work and we chase after it. and someone who's a high achiever in that industry, in a particular industry for you, what should be the message for the new generation, in terms of looking at these recognition or these awards, and it takes you away from the actual work, it takes you away from the real purpose of why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the awards work for people who aren't in the industry. Like, I think they might work to build some kind of, brand, some recognition for people outside. But, and I think like I learned this as well at EA. Like, I remember, and I just even when I got there, like, there was for all these various games, from the outside, you see all of these people that get the recognition, for like the successful games, triple A games. But then when you actually get there, you find out that those weren't the people. Those were just the people that took the credit. And so that's why it's meaningless, because I find that the people, especially when you're in an introverted industry, like a lot of engineers I've worked with, they don't climb to the top of a mountain and scream that they did all of these great things. Like they're very quiet. They are amazing. They go and they do amazing things, and then they go home and like have dinner with their family. So I would just be suspicious of people who are always trying to brag about their awards. I think, like, to me, the world has just become a big. It's not even a humble brag. It's just a big disgusting brag. And I think that that is actually not there. That's not. There's no value in that. What are you really doing when you're bragging, right? You're making somebody else feel like crap. But that's the real purpose of, like, how does this benefit other people, right? It really doesn't. It only benefits you. So it's not a good value. It doesn't help society. It doesn't help. So all of this, like, and it just goes back to like high school. Like, was it cool to have all these awards, like best dressed, and make people feel like, well, how does that serve? We can see that you're best dressed, right? So I personally just don't think, I think it serves the capitalist narrative, and I don't like to buy into it. And I've never cared about it, knowing what I know.
Now, thank you for shedding light on that. And this is very important. The reason I say is we are moving towards that mindset where entrepreneurship is being practiced more and more in the society, where people don't want to work for large industries or organizations that way. And you've seen the playbook of big organizations or organizations from the past as to how do they keep their employees motivated, how do they keep up their productivity and all of that. And one way to do it, besides your formal salary and your wages, and you give them awards, you show them how wonderful you're doing. But we are now into a different world altogether. But the sad part is, despite that transition, profit is still a very loud currency. We are all moving towards profit. And in order for us to get to that profit, we want people to be motivated in and around, and awards and excellence and all of that comes into play. But my question to you, Mona, would be, again from your own experience, do you see that shifting in the new generation? And do you see that shifting in how we take a critical viewpoint of what we have been told to what we should do now through our own eyes?
I mean, yeah, I think that's shifting just by seeing how many people are not willing to go work for these large corporations, how many people want to dive right into startups and take all the risk. And why are they doing that? Because I always say with the award, they don't want the award. They want the royalties. Like, I don't give me the award, give me a commission of the revenue that my product has generated for you, right? If I'm building streaming services and you're making millions of dollars off of hosting all of these revenue making radio stations, I don't want an award that I'm a great engineer. I want a cut. That, like, so to me, be like, again, don't be a fool, right? Like, get what, like, ask for what you deserve in that regard, and like, what's an award? Like, it's really a plaque on your wall. That to me is like, my point is, like, it's that's, they're getting away with it, right? They're dangling this carrot. So I think just we have to be smarter as a society. Like, a title is nothing. A title is not going to put your children through school. The title, like, so people sometimes will like even corporations will dangle a flashy title and a crappy salary. It's like, what do you like? Take the crappy title and the good salary, right? Who cares about the title? But people are like, what's a crappy title? What does it matter, right? And I think it's like, it's because people put external value in external things, and we've lost sight of like where the value really is, in a lot of ways. But yeah, that would be what I would say is like, give. And I think that's, yeah, the signs are like people are trying to, they're building it themselves. They're trying to cut out, kind of the middleman, knowing that if they would produce this product or this service, that they could make most of the money. So I think that's what we're seeing with the startup people going to startups, because they're realizing that, their blood, sweat, and tears is worth a lot more than a salary, a tiny bonus at the end of the year, and some flashy little awards that are thrown around.
Yeah, and we hope the new ecosystem which is being built around at least doesn't take the same old ethos or culture which we see in the big organization in order to emulate the one. Because obviously they've been economically very, very successful. Mm-hmm. But coming back to you, Mona, again, really your story is all about resilience, isn't it? It's resilience in an industry which, again, I'm sorry to break this, but you would have been asked this question so many times, but is still dominated by men, So 2 decades you spent there. Would you have some stories for us in terms of how you've broken through some of the toughest barrier and what actually kept you going?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually almost 3 decades now, because it started in 1999.
Time flies, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think like I've always found it difficult to work across departments. That's been, the hardest in over my career, was to kind of break through. Like I always found, working with other engineers, whether male or female, rarely had been an issue. I mean, every now and then you get, some personalities, but as a team, it didn't. It always felt like we were inclusive, like as a team. But I always found it interesting. It was kind of crossing boundaries that sometimes became a real problem. And especially as I grew, into leadership roles, being the director of engineering or being like a CTO, is just kind of interfacing with sales or interfacing with IT. That's where you get, that's where, in my experience, I found a lot more friction, and a little bit more, of that kind of, oh, it's a man's world. But just like on the inside, like kind of looking back into my team, I've never really felt that, thankfully. So I think like I felt always prepared, for what was, to come. I always felt prepared, and I think that really helped. I remember reading when I was in my early 20s, a bunch of articles and papers about how women in technology never lasted beyond their mid 30s. And I remember being prepared for that. Even as a junior, I was like a junior intern. And the reason was because like it, and I experienced it, but it was because, and this was the theory. And I feel like it, I can corroborate that it's possibly true, but it's because like when you're a junior, you need help. So men are more than happy to help you. Like just those around you are just like, oh, of course I'll help. So it feels great. It feels good. You're getting help. But then as you progress through your career, you are now becoming a leader. And so the ceiling for leadership for women is much lower. And so once you move out of the I need help to, I'm giving direction, the conversations change, and the vibe changes, I think. So I was always kind of, so having read that and having, I've always been prepared for it. And so I think like it was important for me. It's part of the strategy, right? So there was a strategy that unfortunately you have to employ. And I think I always, as just somebody who like thinks about all sides of the coin, like to me, it's fair, when something doesn't look like you don't know how to place it. So I think with engineering, when you just see something that's different, you don't know, and no one's ever given a bunch of women their due respects, especially considering that a lot of engineering came from women. But that hasn't been, so when you don't know, you're not sure what to do. So I think it's important to understand that and not fight that and not alienate that. So I think I've always kind of gone in with like, I'm different. And so I'm not going to exploit. And also, we are different people. So I think I've made it, made an effort not to emasculate. That's been an important part of kind of my approach. But just being prepared for and understanding that at different levels in your career as a woman, you're going to see you're going to have different experiences, and the vibe is going to change just based off of kind of where you are.
No, thank you for sharing that experience. That's very important in terms of, so for younger women who might see themselves in the industry, again, how important it is for them to see likes of yourself, see the likes of you leading and being visible, being recognized. I know you said you're not out there, you're not marketing yourself much, but I feel it's very important for them to see leaders like yourselves being thriving in what you do and how you scaled up in terms of your own career, and in terms of setting up your own organization. So if you were to advise people or leadership or companies, what's one thing they need to do differently in order to hire or in order to bring in the workforce, especially young women, and build a culture around them who are not really represented in the industry? Not just about surviving, but how do they lead? What would your advice be?
How does a company bring in more women?
Yes, yes. And not just women, but individuals from underrepresented society and culture as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to go hand in hand with genuine intent and good faith, right? And I think that you can see just how quickly companies went from, DEI initiatives to just slashing those, the minute it didn't serve them. So I never thought that they were genuine, right? This whole last however many years we've been talking about diversity and inclusion, not genuine, complete BS, bad faith, right? Just to market a couple words. So you can just see that. But when it is genuine, right, the way it looks is very different than what we've seen. So, for example, like for me as a woman engineering, it's actually a lot easier for me to hire women engineers because I'm here and women can see that there's already women like them. So that's important. So once you start to have women, so it's just to me still sad that we have a lot of teams that still don't have any women today. We still have many teams, and there's no excuse for that. And it's intentional. And then to continue to try to hire women without women, it's very difficult. So hire some women. Number one, just hire some women. And then the genuine good faith intent of it goes hand in hand with career path and leadership pathing for women. I have worked at many great companies, but the advice for me has always been to change myself. I remember many female HRs, male HRs, it doesn't matter. It's just part of the system at play, which is like to be louder, to be, to take more space, and I say, no, that's not who I am. So I don't need to I shouldn't need, it's counterproductive and it's not solving any problem if I need to become a man to become a leader. The part of diversity that's important here and why great products are built is when everyone is themselves at the table and you have cohesive representation. That's when the best products are built. If you have people who are pretending to be men and pretending to be white men, you're just, what are you really doing? You're actually not enabling advancement and problem solving and really enlightenment across humanity. So that's what I've seen is like you hire for the sake of hiring and then you force everyone into a funnel that requires a certain personality type and disposition. So you're really not doing anything. So I think absolutely hire women, hire the people, just let them in. Don't make all these excuses to not hire them. And then let people be who you're going to have all kinds of personalities and empower and reward those, fairly and equally. I mean, it's that simple.
I think your word intent is a very important word here, and it makes a lot of sense because a lot of those policies will be meaningless if there is no intent at all. And that's what we've seen. That's why, a lot of those things have been completely erased away. And now we are seeing a new wave of complete sort of disregard for these discussions. But Mona, thank you so much in terms of how you've articulated this. Now, if we move on to the accessibility and sustainability part in terms of how we see the mainstream tech, where priorities often are speed, we're talking about scale, and let's not forget the profit as well. So it all results in a product that excludes a group of people or platform, which only serves a select group of people. Look, I'll just give you a very small example. When we are talking about artificial intelligence, yes, there is a massive uptake in terms of, organizations, individuals are being forced or asked, in different ways to adopt these technology. But you look at the bigger picture, around 30 to 35% of the world population doesn't have access to internet. What does it tell us about the state of where we are in terms of the technology? So your work, where you've always put values at the heart of wherever you've gone, you've given your honest bit, as a philosophy, as an engineer, how do we go across and tell the big organizations or even the smaller startups who have basically taken the same path, but then what do we tell them about accessibility? What do we tell them about the simplicity of the types of technology they are building, and more importantly, the possibility of having those technology into the hands of people who would really, really benefit, rather than, going up and up and up and becoming very, very niche.
Yeah, I think we're in a time now post the 60s where it goes back again to intent, like in the same way that we have bad intent, we have fake intent in terms of how organizations are assembling themselves and the initiatives that they're supposedly taking. It's the same with technology. Like I think now it's very clear to me that the West and what's being released to us in terms of advancements isn't actually what's going on. It's like a Truman Show thing. We're getting these like carrots. Even ChatGPT to me is like that's not the advancement that's really going on here. That's not what's really being developed. And I don't think. And to your point about why is still so many people left without access, it goes back to intent. They will never have access. They were never supposed to have access. The intent is not for them to have access. And so I'm left with the real belief, and especially as you start to see, the real belief is that I believe they will collapse. Like I believe these large tech companies that are the Microsofts and the Amazons, they're not going to be around forever. And I believe that more profoundly because what you're seeing an increase in greed, and you're seeing, and what happens with it, and of course everyone follows, right? When people are cheating, when people are taking steroids, everyone feels like they have to take steroids to play in the game. You take more steroids, you got to take more steroids, and then all of a sudden everyone's dead. Okay, so what's happening right now is they are so greedy, they're cheating, they're chasing profit to the point where the profit is trumping product and usability and service of the user, the service of the customer, and everyone's doing it because they have to do it, to a point where it's leaving such crazy gaps, right? So at the beginning, maybe like, all right, early days, right, we were genuine, we were trying to build things that really like, cars and planes and printing presses, and we're really trying to advance humanity. But it's getting to a point now where it's all a farce. These little gimmicks, these little social media startups, nobody cares. These aren't real advancements, but they're chasing profit. They're chasing, just exploiting us, right? We're the product. And so it's just leaving crazy gaps. And so already you're seeing people are building the real solutions, and those are going to trump. And the more that they lose sight of it, the sooner they're going to fall. It's just that simple to me. Like I see it already. They're over here. People are playing over here now. They've lost sight. So that's just, I don't believe that looking to the Facebooks and the Microsoft and the Oracles and the Ciscos for the future of technology is where we should be looking. And I think we're just going to see that on our own. We're going to start to realize that they're not, they're going to hang themselves. And already we have builders where the talent isn't exclusive to them. They're hiring us. More and more people are refusing to work for them. More and more people are quitting. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think that awareness is coming in surely, slowly but surely is coming in. Now, for people outside the technology or the tech world, you have the users, you have the consumers, and of course the citizens as well. So, coming to the point where what should they look out for or what should they demand to make sure the technology which is interacting or interfacing their lives on a day-to-day basis, how does it stop them from exploiting them rather than sort of helping them, which is what is not happening. So what should they demand from the technology, what should they demand from organization, and what should they demand from people who represent that industry?
yeah. I mean, I think the people. I think we have a lot of power at this moment, especially in terms of using technology in a superfluous manner. So I think like before we demand that our data not be sold, ask ourselves, do we really need to be doing this right now? So I think a gross and a hard kind of boycott, like reversal for us of just like using things. Like I'm happy now to spend an extra 10 minutes doing something manual rather than using anything from OpenAI. The only time I'll use ChatGPT is if it furthers my aims in terms of being vocal about Palestine, help fund Gaza initiatives, and all of that. So I will use those things in terms of saving lives and trying to help the people that are truly having a hard time and being put in a really bad position. But in terms of just for funsies, like when you find out that this is life or death and the things that are really happening, so the just for fun and like the nice to have, I think that that's where we really have to look at why are we using this, and just cutting all of that out of our lives. And I mean that's what I've been doing more and more so, and it's tough, but at the same time, it's not so hard when you realize at the end of this is a dead Palestinian child. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. When you see what's happening now, then it makes it easier for you to ask that question or demand whoever is in and around you.
Mhm.
So, I mean, we now move on to a quick fire round. I'll ask you three questions. Again, very simple in terms of one word or one sentence as you would like. But it's great for the listeners to take away something. But so my first question to you is if there was one breakthrough in technology which you have seen during your career in terms of improving people's life, what would that be? Could you name one? Could you tell us one which you feel the industry should have built on or has managed to build on?
100% the iPhone.
iPhone. Okay.
The breakthrough with the iPhone, empowering people to I understand that it's also given big corp control, more control of people, but at the flip side of that is empowered people to become influencers, to democratize their own lives. I remember when I went to Shanghai back in 2012, and learning about the economic kind of growth that occurred due to smartphones and the why and how, and a lot of the technology in China as well is purposeful. It really is advanced. They're far more advanced, but it is purposeful. It is about quality of life. It is about making things easier and empowering the human. With this, particularly with the WeChat series, just but that you saw how it empowered people in remote villages without access to physical goods to build their own stores and to reach some level of financial freedoms. So that to me, so is a resource that when used, right, it's something that has given people that are resourceful and creative an ability to change their lives on a global scale.
I agree. I agree. And then there's another side to it as well. But let's move on to the next question, where you bring your own experience of, working since 1999 in terms of, a hard lesson which you think every young technologist should hear from you before they start.
Like in terms of something they're going to encounter in their career.
Yeah, imagine them picking up picking up the baton in the tech world and they're just about to start. But then here you are talking to them one difficult lesson which they should get.
I think that they should. One thing is never quit.
Okay.
So like
Be persistent.
yeah, like never quit in out of emotion. Like never quit without being prepared. So especially with it as an engineer, never, kind of I think it's important because engineers spend a lot of time writing code and we kind of fall in love. Like with anything, you fall in love with your baby, with your service, with your game, whatever you're building your application. And that belongs to the corporation. So I think it's important to like understand how to detach and how to not get emotional and not to quit emotionally and not to and always just make sure you have all of the things that you need in case you are, fired or you. So I think just being it's just being very strategic with how you identify with your code and also how you kind of manage your emotions because it can get emotional. I've seen a lot of engineers, and as an example of, I worked with an engineer who quit and, said, I quit, you'll have my reservation on Monday. And like within 5 minutes, they walked him out and he had access to none of his everything locked down. So like, he couldn't download his anything. He, couldn't get anything off of his computer. So just stuff like, and he had worked for the company for 6 years. So I think just stuff like that, just kind of preparing them for like the actual, moment where they will have to walk away, where it's not their code. Yeah.
So you've got to be ready for that before you do that. No, that's a
Mhm.
very practical advice. And my last question to you at this round would be your advice. And again, I'm sorry if I'm putting you in a corner, but a change which you believe should happen, whether that's in policy or in the industry or in our society, if we are really passionate about making technology being useful to the humankind, what is that one change you feel should happen and should happen now?
I think that Palestinian startups should get VC funding, right? If we want to see real development and an honest evolution of technology, 100% equality, 100% fairness in terms of funding and accessibility to resources to build and create solutions.
And would you agree with me that the Palestine here represents all the low and middle income countries which are underrepresented in the tech world? Because
Yeah,
Palestine, yeah.
it does, and but particularly in this current moment, there's a deliberate attempt to further Israeli startups, and that's really where a lot of the VC. If you look at, a lot of the Zionist talking points will center around how Israel has built so much stuff. One of their pride and joy is to say, look at all the technology that Israel has built. We will just take it with us. If you lose Israel, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you invest only in Israeli startups, you're going to get we're all equal, right? So it's an intentional thing to deny Palestinian startups of funding and to only invest or to look for and easily invest in Israeli startups. So that's a bias that needs to go away. And if that goes away, we're already on a better path of
Yeah,
advancement.
yeah. And again, like I said, that's very practical. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. So, like I said, before I close, Mona, if you have anything to give a shout out to, that you'd want, if whatever that may be a personal project, something you're passionate about, something you'd want people to know about. This would be the time, or this would be the space.
Yeah, so of course I have a passion project that I've been working on for 2 years. And more recently, we just developed a platform to replace GoFundMe. So when I launched Help Fund Gaza 2 years ago, it was to promote the campaigns of Palestinians in Gaza that were trying to leave. This was back in March 2024, sorry. And they were all mostly GoFundMes that they had created themselves. And recently, 2 months ago, because of GoFundMe being anti-Palestinian and closing accounts and taking money, I evolved Help Fund Gaza. So now we are running our own gifting platform entirely. And so there's about 50 families now on the platform. Some of them had their campaigns on GoFundMe already closed. Some of them I've recently just added that never had any campaigns to begin with. But we are 100% commission free, no fees. I absolutely take no money from the donors or the beneficiaries, and 100% of the donations go directly to the families. They get wired directly. So please visit helpfundgaza.com. You can help a single family or multiple families in one transaction. And as I said before, 100% of your donation goes directly to the families. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mona. Thank you for your time. And with that, we come to a close. But Mona, thank you for everything you've shared with us. Your journey has truly showed us that, especially when we talk about technology, we talk about how it is not just about what we build, but who is it for? And again, you have shown us that technology carries responsibility as well as possibility. And to all our listeners, thank you for being with us. If this conversation at all moved you, please share it, because the real measure of technology is in speed or scale. It's whether it restores dignity and justice to people's life. And until next time, keep listening, keep questioning, and keep building here in the Broken Bazaar.